South Florida at Cincinnati, Friday night ESPN2 football. Marco, what your bettors be looking at?
Well, RJ, in 1 week, public perceptions turned around totally on these two teams. Last week, we talked about Cincinnati being an underrated team. They're now an overrated team in 1 week, and I'll explain why in this video.
All right, and South Florida?
South Florida, the stock is pummeling, falling fast.
So we got someone too underrated, someone overrated. That sounds like value.
You're going to hear about it.
All right, so let's start with Cincinnati.
All right, Cincinnati, as we talked about, beginning of the season, new coach, got things to adjust to. They started slow. Well, public saw them at the beginning of the season. They remember what they see, and this team had a couple bad performances. Linesmaker was slow to react as they started to catch on to the new coach and what he wanted to do with the program. Now this team is playing much better ball. Last week we gave Cincinnati out on this video.
Which was an
Louisville.
extension of that underperformance early when the expectations are high with the new coach. Okay.
Vegas didn't catch up to them. There was value last week, I felt, in Cincinnati. Now, given the fact both teams were on national TV last week, this is a rare occurrence. These two teams played on Thursday and Friday last week. South Florida had a bad game against
South Florida was on the road on Thursday. Cincy was on the road on Friday.
Correct. Cincy went into Louisville in a shootout. They went back and forth, won the game by 8 points. South Florida, on the other hand, had a bad game against West Virginia, and in the last two games, South Florida has only scored 6 and 9 points.
They've yet to score a touchdown in 2 conference games.
Good point. So I'm looking here. The public's going to be in love with Cincinnati in this game based on what they saw with their own eyes. I think you're going to see a different South Florida team. I like that this line is over a touchdown. South Florida has a good defense. They'll be able to slow Cincinnati down, and Cincinnati's defense is not as good as West Virginia's, so we'll see some points from South Florida.
Now, the wise guys agree with you. This game opened at 9 and was bet down to about 7.5 as of our Wednesday taping. Actually, the Hilton had 7 right before we went on air. So it looks like this downward pressure. And remember, with the wise guy stuff, if it's going against what seems to be the public side, it's usually a legitimate position. It's hard to say since he wouldn't be the public side here, thus they really seem to like South Florida.
And I agree with them 100%. I have Cincinnati winning this game, but I have it as like a 24-20 type game. So I'm going to take...
Give us your projection.
Cincinnati wins by 4, but we're going to take South Florida plus the points, make that an official play here.
And would you recommend as quickly as possible on this? Because you don't want this at 7.
No, you want to grab this thing at 7.5, and there's really not a lot of difference at 7.5 and 8.
Now, you had a game, we were talking about this, you had a game this weekend where people that shopped got a push and people that weren't able to shop got a loss.
It's very important. Well, my game of the month on Sunday was Houston Texans, and that line was 4.5 all week long. Sunday, it dropped to 4 at several books. Here in town, the Hilton and Stations both, and I do a lot of wagering through Stations because they have, I feel, in town, the best phone system. But Bookmaker had it at 4, and that's the book that I used and recommended through our services. But it's important, and a lot of people,
All right, let's go.
Well,
so you want to shop for lines.
You want to shop for lines, but you want to have 2. And when you
All
shop
right,
for
so
lines...
let me jump in. So books have a profile.
Absolutely.
And some take a lot of public action, which typically means they're going to shade the line towards the favorite, laying 5 instead of 4.5 or whatever. Mm-hmm. And the sharper books are typically going to shade the line away from the favorite because sharps are typically playing the dogs. So ideally, if you only could have, really more books the better, but if you can have 2, you want one book that's sharp, and Bookmaker's a great example of that. Bet Jamaica's a great example of that. And you want a book that's square. Bodog's an example of that, and Bet Us is an example of that. Now, pregameaction.com, you can get the lowdown on all these books and find the best bonuses available there. Okay, so let me see. I got one question before we head out here. Since he has covered 6 straight in this series, okay, we got new coaches on both sides or both teams here, first-year coaches. In your opinion, what trends carry forward from coaches and what trends, and in that case, it would be a cultural thing. Let's say Ohio State. Ohio State has a culture. The Steelers have a culture. Mm-hmm. And if you give me a trend on the Steelers that goes back to Chuck Noll, I might actually give it some credence because of that culture. Other schools don't have any real culture when it comes to football. Is that how you look at it, cross coaches?
When you say culture, the word that comes to mind to me when I look at some of these series is it a series that there's a rivalry involved? Like if it's a Ohio State, Michigan type game, Pitt, West Virginia, I would not put a South Florida, Cincinnati as a rivalry. But
So you're saying specifically when it comes to matchups between two teams, if the rivalry between these teams is meaningful, then you're more inclined to go cross coaching tenures, I guess, would be the way to say.
So respect tendencies, yes.
And in this case, not so much.
Absolutely.
I had an interesting conversation with a new friend of mine on Twitter. He's out of Kansas, and he's actually quite a sharp guy. And I gave a stat that went cross coaches, and he came back and was like really dismissive, like, well, that guy hasn't been there for that long. And my rationale was there's certain traditions that sometimes are going to stay pertinent across time or across coaching staffs. And I guess that's the trick, identifying when that's the case and when it's not. Okay, now it's your turn to continue the conversation in the comment section with Marco and me. And next up, we're going to be moving in our next video and our next actual audio podcast. We'll be talking about the weekend's biggest games.